The clock's hand was inching toward midnight when Martha Sullivan hit the elevator button and gave a weary wave goodbye. Out in the nearly empty parking lot, only a couple of on-call cars broke the silence. After 16 hours in operating rooms, her mind begged for a bed. Her heart stubbornly kept her from the empty apartment. At 65, she was a legend in cardiology, decades of shifts, countless lives saved. Since Roger's death 6 months earlier, she had traded home for the hospital. There, the beeps of monitors drowned out a silence that scared her more than any cardiac arrest. Martha was crossing the courtyard when her sight blurred. Dots of light spun. Her legs gave way. She tried to lean on the pillar, but the concrete slipped away. The last image in her mind was the moon's glow ripping through the clouds. "Dr. Martha, can you hear me?" Elena's voice, a colleague and friend, pulled her back. Eyes opening, white walls, the smell of antiseptic, a heart monitor beeping, now for her. "What happened?" she whispered. "You fainted in the parking lot. Exhaustion, dehydration, sky-high blood pressure. Your body finally shouted what you wouldn't listen to." Martha tried to sit up. Elena held her arm. 48 hours of observation, no discussion. I've already called your kids." And, mixing affection with an order, "This time, you're the patient." Thinking of her children, Martha felt a squeeze that almost stole her breath. Since Roger's funeral, she'd stopped answering calls and kept canceling Sunday lunches. Every refusal weighed like another brick on her chest. Hours later, Lawrence and Audrey walked into the hospital room. They traded a quick glance before speaking. "Mom, you can't keep going like this," Audrey said, wrapping Martha's hand in hers. "You and Dad always planned to slow down after so many years taking care of other people. Now you're hurting yourself to work more." Martha tried to keep her voice steady. "Work is all I have left." Lawrence, blunt as ever, leaned toward her. "We miss him too. But Dad would never let you destroy yourself like this." 3 days later, Martha left the hospital on a 3-month medical leave. The director, an old colleague of Roger's, was clear: face the grief or don't come back to the ward. In the 10th floor apartment, the silence sounded louder than the ambulances outside. Martha let her bag drop in the hallway and walked to the bedroom. The right side of the bed was untouched. The pillows still sat where he liked them. Roger's scent had faded from the sheets, but it lived on in her memory, a mix of aftershave and old book pages. Martha sat down, touched the cold fabric, and realized, this time no scalpel or extra shift could put off the pain. She had to face the absence, or get lost inside it. She flung the windows open, letting the cold autumn air flood the room. Along with the breeze came horns, far-off voices, the city's constant hum. The noise distracted her for a few minutes. But the next morning, the emptiness was still there. Before coffee, she stopped in front of Roger's closet. Audrey had suggested the task right after the funeral. Martha had put it off as long as she could. Now there was no escape. She turned the oak hinges. Behind them, her husband's life looked untouched. Shirts lined up, sweaters stacked, shoes in a perfect row. Roger always liked order. Martha, a functional mess. Contrasts that made them laugh. She took a deep breath and started sorting. On the left, what would go to donation? On the right, what she'd keep as a memory. Every fold brought back a moment. The navy blue tie from Lawrence's wedding. The wool sweater bought in Scotland when they spent a week in a cabin watching the stars. The pair of shoes he wore to the first dinner with his future in-laws. Pile after pile, Martha realized she wasn't just emptying a closet. She was agreeing, piece by piece, to live on. There were still hangers, stories, silences, and deep down, a blank space she would have to fill herself. Moving through the room in silence, she came to the old tweed coat, the one he wore whenever the air turned cold. Roger had worn it on their 20th wedding anniversary at the kids' graduations, every autumn he lived. She pulled it off the hanger and hugged it. The familiar smell rushed back, his laugh, the way he adjusted the collar before heading out. The tears she'd been holding finally broke. When the crying eased, Martha felt something hard in the inner lining. She reached in and pulled out a brass key pinned to a folded piece of paper. She opened it carefully. Acacia Street, 278. The address meant nothing to her. She sat on the edge of the bed, heart racing. Then she remembered. That morning, Roger had called from the hospital, glowing. "I've got a surprise, honey. The one we've talked about for years. I can't wait to show you when I get home." That was the last time she heard his voice. Now the key and the number gleamed in her hand, calling her to uncover the surprise Roger never had time to reveal. That night, Marta opened the kitchen door, and the world stopped. Roger lay on the floor, his face colorless, his body still. The medics came fast, but the heart attack had been massive. Shock swallowed everything, even the envelope he'd left on the table. Only hours later, in the silence before dawn, did she notice the sheet of paper with an address written by hand. On impulse, she typed the location into the computer. It was a residential neighborhood 40 minutes away, known for mansions surrounded by old gardens. Sleep was impossible. What had Roger set up? A special dinner? Tickets to some show? He had always loved surprising her, even after all these years. At dawn, Marta got up unhurried, like someone taking part in a ritual. She chose the light blue blouse Roger liked, put on a subtle lipstick, and let down her bun so the gray strands fell over her shoulders. In the car, she followed the GPS directions while her mind sifted through memories. Every laugh, every promise, every unfinished plan. The downtown buildings fell behind. Wider, tree-lined streets appeared, where the wind seemed to move slowly. Elegant houses showed through the leaves, behind wrought iron gates. With every mile, Marta's pulse sped up. Only a few minutes left. Deep down, she feared what she might find as much as what she might not. She didn't know it yet, but the next gate would be the first step toward understanding Roger's final gift, and maybe toward reinventing her own life. Turning onto Acacia Street, Martha felt the car slip into a golden tunnel. Tall branches arched over the road, painting the asphalt with warm autumn tones. Each house sat back from the street, wrapped in gardens that breathed peace, a sharp contrast to the rush she carried inside. The GPS announced they'd arrived. She braked in front of a 2-story house with a porch running all around the front. From the gate, a stone path zigzagged through beds of old roses, blue-purple hydrangeas, and camellias still in bud, all lit by sleeping solar lamps. Even a bit neglected, the garden breathed promise. The house looked like a picture in a children's book. Pale yellow walls, wide windows with white frames, a dark wooden door set with stained glass. A swing creaked slowly on the porch, nudged by the breeze. Martha turned off the engine, took a deep breath, and settled her hand on the handle. The moment she turned it, heart hammering, she realized this wouldn't be just another visit. It was the start of something she couldn't name yet. The key slid into the lock without resistance. Martha twisted her wrist and heard the click that signals passage, a silent invitation to cross that door. Inside, dim light. Closed curtains let in narrow strips of sun, like flashlights pointing at the unknown. She ran her hand along the wall and found the switch. In a flash, the room took on shape and color. Wooden floor, stone fireplace, a few pieces of furniture draped in white sheets, a scene that seemed to be waiting for the right moment to wake up. She crossed the room to the dining table, a sturdy piece of oak. In the center, a flower arrangement past its prime, dried petals that still held a hint of perfume. Beside it, a brown envelope with a real estate logo. Martha's fingers shook as she broke the seal. Inside was the deed to the house issued 3 weeks earlier, a date that made her chest tighten. Roger Sullivan, her husband, was the buyer of record. Clipped to the page, a handwritten note. "Mr. Sullivan, as requested, the flowers were placed on the table to surprise your wife. We've delivered the keys. The house is ready to welcome you both. Thank you for your trust, and may you be very happy in your new home." The world seemed to sink a few inches. Martha sat in the nearest chair, the letters blurred before her tear-filled eyes. Every word from Roger echoed there in that empty space, silent proof of a future he had planned but would never live. She pressed the note to her chest. Between the ticking clock and the distant crackle of the fireplace, she understood that the house held more than walls. It held one last act of love, ready to reveal itself room by room while she gathered strength to keep writing the story he had started. Have you ever felt your heart stop for a second? Martha felt it when she opened that house's door for the first time. No traffic noise, only distant birdsong and the soft creak of wood underfoot. Here, Roger had set the stage for their forever. A refuge close enough to the grandkids, far enough from the rush that had always stolen their Sundays. She walked through the still empty living room, trying to picture furniture, laughter, future dinners. But the silence was heavy. "And now, Roger," she whispered, staring at nothing. A beam of light cut through the window and lit up an album on the mantel. She didn't remember seeing it. She picked it up. The cover had no title, just worn leather, as familiar as his voice. First page, the two of them, fresh medical graduates, faces full of plans. Last page, Roger at 70, surrounded by kids and grandkids, the same spark in his eyes. Between one picture and the next, decades squeezed together, and a sealed letter with her name on it. Hands shaking, Martha broke the seal. "My dear Martha, we made it. I hunted for this place for months, thinking of every walk when you sighed passing this neighborhood. Now it's ours. After so many years taking care of others, it's time for life to take care of us. I see you on the porch with a book, me, scribbling verses you pretend to like. Grandkids running in the yard, Lawrence wrestling the grill, Audrey describing her next show. Happiness won't wait. When you open this letter, I hope you feel the same pull I felt walking through this gate. With love, now and always, Roger." Martha closed her eyes. The sun slid across the rug like it was marking a starting line. She took a deep breath, let the longing settle, and heard, almost as advice, her own heart answer. "Then let's begin. Imagine walking down the hallway of an empty house, hearing only your own footsteps. Martha does that all day. She goes up, down, opens doors, shuts memories. Upstairs, she finds 3 bedrooms. The first holds the future she planned with Roger. The other 2, silent, wait for grandkids' laughter. She heads to the basement. There's the outline of a woodworking studio. Sawdust in the air, the smell of fresh-cut pine. Roger started it weeks earlier without telling anyone. Martha runs her hand over the unfinished bench and feels the weight of choices she hasn't made yet. Late afternoon, the porch swing drifts slowly. The sun ducks behind the trees. The wind carries birdsong and sweeps away city noise. There, in the gentle creak of wood, Martha decides. And once she decides, she never looks back. 3 weeks later, the downtown apartment holds only echoes. Boxes, furniture, and memories have moved to the dream house, the one Roger set up piece by piece. The kids, caught off guard, soon understand. Changing address is their mom's way of learning to breathe again. The old guest room becomes a tidy office where Martha volunteers a few hours a week. She hasn't hung up her lab coat for good, she just lets it rest when the breeze calls. Outside, the garden comes back to life. A neighborhood gardener teaches her the rhythm of the soil. Hands once steady for sutures now prune roses, replant seedlings, and find that precision lives in patience too. Every new bud confirms the choice she made that afternoon on the swing. And if anyone asks, Martha will say the house was never empty. It was just waiting for the right moment to tell its story. Every Sunday, the house woke up with a burst of energy. Lawrence arrived with his wife and 3 kids. Right after, Audrey showed up with her husband and the twins. The table that sat quiet all week could barely handle so many voices, laughs, and dishes passed around. Almost a year after finding the key hidden in Roger's coat pocket, Martha knelt by the front walk, lining up freshly planted tulips. The spring air carried a light smell of wet earth when Audrey sat on the grass beside her. "Mom, I was so worried after Dad passed," Audrey began, watching her mom's dirt-covered hands. "It felt like you'd given up on living." Martha looked at her hands, so different from the spotless ones she kept at work, and let a small smile slip. "For a while I really did," she admitted, "but somehow your dad found a way to remind me there was still life here." Audrey squeezed her mom's arm. Around them, rows of tulips pointed at the sky, promising blooms that would soon appear, a silent reminder that new beginnings also sprout from the ground. When the last visitor walked out the gate, the porch sank into comfortable quiet. Martha settled on her usual step, wrapped in the tweed that had once been Roger's, now more sweet memory than sharp ache. Between her hands, steam rose slowly from a cup of tea, as if asking permission to stay. She lifted her eyes to the sky, now dusted with stars, pulled the little key from her pocket, and let the metal catch the lamp's faint glow. "Thank you, my love," she murmured, unhurried. "For this house? And for what comes next." Just then, a breeze touched the wind chime. The soft tinkling echoed through the wood, almost reciting the old verse, "To everything there is a season." Martha smiled, maybe for the first time without holding back, and finally felt that this was her season to start over. Did you like the story? Leave a rating from 1 to 5 in the comments and tell me why. And before you go, click the video that just popped up on your screen. See you soon.